Welcome to K6 Wellness Revolution, where we believe health is worth fighting for. This podcast focuses on all things related to natural health, wellness, and vibrant living. We know your time is valuable, and I'm honored that you're spending some of it here. So get ready, because the Wellness Revolution starts right now. Welcome back to the K6 Wellness Revolution podcast. I'm Sharon, traditional naturopath and family nurse practitioner here at K6 Wellness Center in Dallas, Texas, and I'm joined by Elena, our holistic health coach. We blend trusted expertise, compassionate care, and a passion for helping you achieve optimal health. Because here we believe that wellness isn't just a goal, it's a revolution. And spring is upon us. Soon anyway. And it's the season that we think of decluttering our closets and opening the windows and resetting our homes and many other things. But what about our bodies? You know, every year around this time, social media fills up with promises of liver flushes, gallbladder cleanses, coffee enemas, and detox teas and miracle protocols claiming to remove toxins and melt away sludge and clear out gallstones and unwanted pounds, and all of it's natural, and it's marketed as kind of internal spring cleaning, and it's a fresh start for various organs in your body. And the big question really is, though, does your liver really need a cleanse? Can you really flush out gallstones with olive oil and lemon juice? And what does an enema actually do? Does it really help? What's the difference between a cleanse and a flush? And what is a detox? Well, today, Elena and I want to discuss all of these things. And so we're going to kind of dive into the whole shebang around detoxing, cleansing, flushing. And I think that a good place to start is, you know, just kind of understanding the organs involved with the concept of detoxification, cleansing, and flushing. And one of those would be the main organ that we hear about, which is the liver. And so, Elena, why don't you walk us through the liver?
Well, I think we all know our liver's pretty important, but it can be easy to just not have a good enough foundation or understanding to know, what does that mean? And we know it detoxes, but it also is responsible for producing bile. And we need bile for digestion. We need bile for clearing out the bile ducts. It, binds to toxins, flushes that out. But our liver also metabolizes our hormones. And how many people come in here needing help with their hormones, and we find, oh, it's actually your liver needs the help, not your hormones. It's the way your body uses them and metabolizes them or does not use them. But it also helps with our glucose regulation. So it's a big deal when we're dealing with type 2 diabetes and any type of insulin or glucose sensitivity or just metabolic syndrome type conditions. And so, we've got to nurse that liver sometimes because we tax it a lot. And true, it is designed to filter. It's doing that 24/7. Like, our liver is constantly detoxing things we're exposed to. But it's pretty fascinating when you consider our liver filters over 1 liter of blood every minute. That old baby's working hard. It's working really hard. And then we are constantly eating or drinking things that can tax it. We're exposed to things that can tax it. But it's a rather remarkable organ. You can tax it a lot and it will keep working. It might be working hard, but it will keep working. And I love that our conversation today is going to, focus on some things that we can do to help it do what it's designed to do. So liver's pretty important. You can't talk about detox without talking about the liver.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing, the liver's confusing because it is so complex, and it's not just, detox, but it's a digestive organ, but it also is a filter, and it filters your blood. It has to create a pathway for everything we take in, whether it's a natural substance or a synthetic substance like medications. So anything you swallow, anything you breathe, anything that gets absorbed through your skin or injected, eventually is going to go through your liver. So it is important. It's kind of your little security checkpoint like TSA, and
Right.
it has to decide, is this safe, or does this need to be captured up, bound up in something and gotten rid of? So there's different phases also of detoxification. And if you're a biohacker, or if you're, this isn't your first rodeo with detoxifications, cleanses, and flushes, you may have heard of phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. And it's where the liver is doing things like, first, your liver in phase 1 detoxification is going to kind of loosen things up. Like, hey, we're going to use enzymes mainly to kind of break things down and get big things turned into little things, right? And then in phase 2, you're going to get everything kind of packaged up so that it can be taken out of the body safely. That's an easy way to think about it. And so the body, or the liver, will do that either through bile and stool, or through via the kidneys and urine, and then even our sweat and our breath are ways that will get rid of things. So the liver, I think, is a big deal. And I think you're right. I mean, it's important to understand that. But let's step outside of this for a second before we go any further down the liver, and before we get to the other organs. And let's kind of go into the verbiage, because we hear detox, we hear spring cleaning, we hear flushes, and we hear cleanses, and then we can put any kind of name on there. And I don't want to just like start naming names and, sound like a judgy person, because I'm not going to be judgy. Well, I am going to be judgy, but I'll do it without naming.
Through constructive lens.
Yeah. But I think that sometimes we get confused with what is involved in a cleanse, or what's in a flush. What's the difference, right?
Yeah.
And what's a detox? And I think that it's important to kind of know what's what. And so I want to give my take on it, real quick. I think that when you think of detoxification, like you were just saying, okay, look, it's important to understand that what the liver does is related to detoxification, both digestively and chemically, and all the other things. And, other organs do that too. Think about detoxification in the sense of not in the health sense. What do we hear? Detox programs. That's for people on drugs, right? For addictions, they got to go through detox, or they got to go through rehab. Well, what does that entail? And does it usually feel good the whole way through? Not usually.
No, it doesn't.
It's withdrawing from harmful substances. It's getting the body to behave differently, learning to do things without the assistance of a certain substance. And it can involve, adding certain medications to coax the body to behave a certain way. It can also usually involves withdrawing from certain substances. Okay, so there's detoxification. And I think in the sense of health, we look at it as I think of it as all of these other things that we're talking about fall under the umbrella of detoxifications, because the whole point of going through detoxification is to make the body healthier, right?
Well, right. And I think in the true sense of a detox, that means you're changing the environment that the organ lives in. So is that removing things? Is that removing toxic substances? Is that adding in nutritious substances? Is that using different practices? But it really isn't something you just do. You have to live it.
Yeah.
You can't just, sure, you can go do a drug detox or something like that, but you don't just do it and you're done. It is a lifestyle of removing things and adding in the healthy things. But I would agree, cleanse, flush, all this, it does fall under the lines of detox, because we are amplifying the removal of toxic substances through our liver. We're trying to give it a little helping hand.
Yeah, for sure. And then, so let's think about flushes.
Hmm.
So I always think of flushing the toilet, flushing the radiator on a car. When you're flushing something, what are you doing? Well, okay, if you don't know what the radiator on a car is, because maybe you're too young or you just have been sheltered and have a mechanic, lucky you. Um, think about flushing the toilet. What do you do when you're flushing the toilet? You're forcing water or you're using water to force other fluids and solids down a pipe.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, what about when you flush a radiator? You're using water to flush thick antifreeze or sludge through the radiator of your car. If you're flushing other things, it's usually involving water or something to flush something or clean it out using forceful motion. So, a flush in the sense of health is using fluids, usually water's involved, but you're creating movement to force the movement of something else, some unwanted substance out of the body. The first thing that comes to mind really is the gallbladder flush. I think that's the one we hear the most
Of
about.
course, yeah. And it gets a lot of attention, negative and positive. And I mean, you and I definitely agree it's a positive thing. But
For
you
most
need
people when done the right
right, I
way.
was gonna say, but you have to have the right tools on board to do that. And I think people have seen this probably on the internet, and it gets a lot of bad rep because people have done it wrong. And it is, when done right, it's just a beautiful reset. But it's not the only part of the body that we flush. It's just the biggest one we think of when we are considering detox.
And I think part of the reason the gallbladder flush gets so much attention is number one, the gallbladder gets treated like an extra organ.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not believe that we are born with extra organs. Yes, there are organs that we can survive without.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the gallbladder is one of those. However, that being said, the gallbladder is an important organ and we do better when we have it in us. And I don't think that just because we have gallstones or just because we have a lot of sludgy bile or buildup of cholesterol, that we need to take out the gallbladder. But that's the standard of care in America.
That's throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I mean,
It is.
you aren't figuring out why this is happening.
Yeah, and how many people have we seen through the years who have their gallbladder removed, and yet the symptoms that they had before the
Yeah.
cholecystectomy still persist.
Mm-hmm.
And so removing the gallbladder did no good. And so we still have issues. So what I prefer to have people do is when they first start to have symptoms or that first gallbladder attack, let's start to address, okay, how much fat is in your diet? Are you using bitters or bile salts or
Or even just
betaine HCl?
digestive, right? Like
Yeah,
just digestive enzymes or stomach acid sometimes. It's as simple as
right,
that.
right. What are you eating? And then let's do some reparative work. But this is also, I think this demands a little commentary, and this is where I'm going to put on my judgy hat. And I don't think that you should be taking advice necessarily from insta-famous know-nothings who really don't know anything and are not equipped to help you through a gallbladder flush gone wrong. Because sometimes they're not all unicorns and rainbows. Sometimes they don't go that smoothly.
Right. Well,
And you need somebody who can help you when you have
yeah.
complications.
And I just want to say, in people's defense, when they are online touting it, it's because it can change your life.
Yeah,
When you need it and it's the appropriate tool, a liver gallbladder flush is a game changer. Uh,
it is. And it's not complicated, and most of the time it goes off without a hitch and people feel immediate relief. And
but
I would
not
say at
always.
least 9 times out of 10 they're like, "Why did I never know about this?
Yeah.
This is amazing."
And just to let our listeners know who maybe don't know what this flush is that we're talking about. It's a specific process and spacing of consuming Epsom salts, olive oil, and lemon juice. And it does need to be done right, because that's a horrible combination. I always say it's one of the nastiest things you could possibly drink. And, when I preface it that way with clients, they're like, you're not selling me on this. But I have to say, just trust me. And like you said, 9 times out of 10, absolute night and day difference once they've done it.
Yeah.
But if you're just hacking it and you have some other pre-existing things, or you have hydration issues, it can be detrimental.
Yeah, it really can. And if you're really interested in preserving your gallbladder,
Mhm.
if you're really interested in bettering your digestive health, then it really behooves you to do your research, find somebody who's qualified to coach you through it. And then you know what you're doing, and you can continue these on as needed throughout the rest of your life, knowing full well what is normal, what's not normal, what to expect. And you don't have to, worry about, what you don't know.
Well, it becomes a tool in your toolbox once you have had
Absolutely.
someone walk you through it and kind of hold your hand a little bit and help you know what to expect. So, like you
Yeah.
said, knowing what's normal and what is not normal.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the most rewarding things about the gallbladder flush, again, because it is a flush
Mhm.
most of the time. Well, I don't know actually if I don't think I've ever had somebody tell me, well, I didn't see anything come out.
Well, it
Mo-
does sometimes. Think about it. Sometimes there's those people who just needed to clear out the sludgy bile. So you
Well,
don't
but that
always
still
see it.
looks like beach sand.
But people don't always know what they're looking for. They're
True.
looking for these giant stones. Well, you're not going to get these giant rocks or stones,
Yeah.
That's not what we're flushing out.
Right. They may feel like giant rocks or stones,
Mhm.
but it looks like pea grapple.
Mhm.
But anyway, it is a rewarding experience nonetheless. And I just feel like as a culture, and if healthcare embraced the idea of, let's see if we can clean this out before we just remove the organ, it could be really game changer
Yeah.
type situation for a lot of people. The other thing that we flush is our colon. And we do this in healthcare. We do it outside of healthcare in complementary and alternative ways. And we do it with enemas. An enema is what we use, on the extreme end when somebody's constipated and maybe they have an impacted bowel, or they're so constipated. It's awful when you have to, really like disimpact a bowel manually. That's uncomfortable. But you can use water, you can use saline, you can use mineral oil. I think mineral oil is harsh.
That
It
is.
seems terrible. I think some animal had it laying around and went, "This ought to work." And they did it.
Mm.
And they were like, "Yeah, it works." And they had cramps, afterwards. But in alternative medicine, in a lot of traditions, like there are colon hydrotherapists who provide colonics. This is a flush, but you can do home enemas. You can go to special practices where all they do are provide colon hydrotherapy, and that is water in your colon. And some of them may use a gallon, and some of them may go up to much, much, much more. And it can take, upwards of an hour to go through it. And it can go all the way through your large intestine. So there are a lot of people who feel better. There are cancer patients who use coffee
I
enemas.
say, let's not forget coffee enemas. Anyone who knows anything about Elena at K6, I am the enema queen, because they are the best at home tool you can use to flush, and even if you want to call it detox.
Yeah. Yeah, they use it for pain control.
Hmm.
And they use it, really to help pull toxins. It helps to pull toxins through the common bile duct and out through the colon. There's so much to be said for the use of coffee, but there are many, many other helpful recipes for different types of enemas. Now, that being said, people do really dumb things with enemas.
They
And I
do.
think I think it's really important to remember that anything you put in your body should be safe and it should be prepared correctly.
Right.
Um, so
Well,
here
and eh, well, sorry.
no, go
I was just
ahead.
saying, on the note of coffee enemas, I always say coffee enema is the gateway to colon irrigation and detox via the back door. That is
Yeah.
one tool. And the beautiful thing about coffee enemas is the bowel cleansing and flushing is just a happy little side effect. It's more about what's happening in your liver when you do that. It stimulates the production of glutathione. It makes your liver clear out those bile ducts. So you get this flush through the liver and this flush through the colon while your
Mhm.
body's also producing antioxidants more than it would on its own. Because it does produce glutathione, but that stimulates like a
Mhm.
super dose of glutathione. So flushing and detox, I mean, that's two birds with one stone there when you're doing a coffee enema or a coffee enema that has some other nutrients in it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the myths that would be really important to bust right about now is the idea that if you start doing, especially coffee enemas, because those are one like according to the Gerson Institute, they'll use them multiples per day
Hmm. Hmm.
for active cancer patients. And people will criticize it saying, "Oh, well, now you can't go to the bathroom without having coffee enemas." But actually, that's not true. It's been proven to be a false allegation because they've shown that people who've done daily enemas for years can, in fact, within, I think, the span of a week, be using the bathroom normally again, that peristalsis does not end, and that's the muscle contractions that, move cause stool to move through the large intestine.
And
So, we
wouldn't
don't
you
lose that.
say a lot of the time when you're in those situations where you're doing those enemas or flushes every day, there's just not as much to move out because you
True.
have sped up that process. So,
True. Yeah.
there's two different ways to look at that. You're slowing it down because there's not as much to move.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Just kinda like when you fast or
Exactly.
change your diet, there's just not a lot there to get out.
Not a lot
So,
happening. But,
um
I just wanna mention too, we talked about the colon flushing, but there's other things we do too when we talk about flushing. Yes, our conversation is a lot to do with the liver, but sinus rinsing. You're flushing the
yes.
sinuses, you
We
know?
call that rinsing. Why do we not call it
I
flushing?
know, because it's essentially what we're doing, rinsing, flushing, clearing. I mean, we're clearing out toxins and debris and, mucus, and then you breathe better. But,
Yeah.
you know, you don't think of that as a detox and think that's weird. Well, maybe some people do, but I feel like sinus rinsing and flushing is pretty well, received in all circles.
Yeah, it is, and I feel like especially since I mean, the neti pot is kind of the OG, right, of
And
sinus.
kind of the worst.
I think it's the hardest. It was
Me too.
definitely I hated it. I felt like I was being waterboarded,
Yeah.
and I have bad childhood memories. I think that's from growing up with 3 brothers. I think they tried to drown me too many times, so I never liked neti pots. But then when the Neomed came along, I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, this is super simple, and it's not like being waterboarded. This is okay, I can do this." And now there's so many great tools out there, the Navage, the,
Sinupulse.
Sinupulse,
Mhm.
yeah, there's oh goodness, I know we're leaving out some,
I'm sure we are, but those are the big ones at the very
yeah.
least.
Yeah, and I think that with the idea of flushing, where maybe, your normal everyday Joe doesn't need an enema every day, and maybe you don't need, a gallbladder flush every week. But in Texas, and I know in other parts, of the country, depending on the season, sometimes those sinus rinses are really, really useful every day, and depending on where you work. How much dust are you around? What is the environment that you work in? You may need to flush your sinuses on the daily.
Mm.
And this is something that is not bad for you if you do it correctly. And I cannot tell you how many times I question people about how they sinus rinse
What
because
water are they using? The same for
yes,
enemas, whether it's enemas or sinus rinsing.
so true. So go for it, Elena.
Uh, Distilled water, definitely not tap water. I have caught people doing enemas and sinus rinsing with tap water. That
And
is
it makes a difference, and
it
they don't understand till
does.
they quit doing it. Oh my gosh, that's so
Exactly.
different.
So distilled is the gold standard. And the best way to do distilled is to just get an at home distiller. If you are someone who's wanting to live this lifestyle of
Yeah.
flushing and cleansing and detoxing, just get one on Amazon. They're under $100. You can make your
Mm.
own distilled water that's not sitting in plastic, and you have that ready to go for every single time you need a flush or a rinse.
And if you don't have room for a countertop distiller, then just whenever you go to the grocery store, pick up a couple of gallons of distilled
Yep.
water and keep it in your pantry.
It's better than nothing.
Yeah. And distilled water is not tap water that you've boiled.
Thank you for clarifying that as well. Yeah, it's not the same thing because actually, when you boil the water, you are concentrating the toxins in it. The water is evaporating away, but you are concentrating the heavy metals, the chemicals, really anything that could be left in the water. That's what's left in your pot. So don't boil it, please. And think that's the same.
Yeah, you're flushing your sinuses with everybody else's pharmaceuticals
Yeah, no thanks.
that they've pooped out.
No,
That's
no,
kind of disgusting when you think about it.
it is. But
But
I think when it comes to, you talked about the sinuses, reasons why you should do that. You know, a lot of people can think they either need to detox their or flush their liver or do enemas all the time, or they don't do it at all. And typically, there's a happy medium point, unless you're dealing with an acute situation, at which point you really need a practitioner because there's no way that, Sharon, you or I could give our listeners, here's the one way everyone should do it. It's not a one size fits all. It's not a cookie cutter recommendation, do a flush this many times or do this many enemas. It's going to be different for everybody.
yeah, that's true. And the type of enemas or flushes, and even
Mm-hmm.
with regard to sinus rinses, there are some people who will use, the oregano oil or the grapefruit seed extract in their sinuses. And it just makes my eyes water to think about. I don't know what they're made of, but it's something a lot sturdier than I'm made of.
That's
I
painful.
can't do it.
It
But
can be
I
effective
don't
now and then, but it's painful.
it is painful, but some people don't feel it. And it does depend on what you're around and what you're doing. And
Mm,
I think that, we have the experience and the knowledge to know, okay, we have all of these tools that we can draw from. And sometimes we want to mix in some other things with that are going to make a flush or a cleanse more effective.
mhm.
But then too, let's talk about the ears for a minute.
Oh, let's not forget the ears. Oh my goodness.
I love ears. It's
I
kind
don't
of
love them, but I am fascinated by what happens in that process. For some reason, the ears give me the ick more than talking about bowels and enemas and sinuses. So you take it away on this one,
I
Sharon.
love pulling things out of ears, I have to say. But please don't ever stick Q-tips in your ears. And by that same token, please don't ever put Bluetooth um
Earbuds.
earbuds, whatever they're called. I can look in somebody's ears with an otoscope and I can tell you if they wear Bluetooth headphones.
That's horrifying
Yeah,
because most
I
people are walking around with them.
I
I
can
told a
tell
client
there is a
just today
difference.
again, no Bluetooth in those ears.
We can also look at thermographies and tell you.
That's what I was basing it off of today.
Yeah, the Bluetooth is so bad for you. There's not enough anything you can flush your ears out to make up for putting
Yeah.
Bluetooth ear pods in.
But you're
But
saying you see increased inflammation, irritation, like expound on that for our
inflammation, but
listeners.
it also the shape of the wax caverns, the
Wild.
way that the wax is shaped, and I don't think it's from the physical, it's not just the physical shape of the headphone or the
Mhm.
ear piece. It's it's what it does to the wax.
Like what that frequency is
It's the
doing
color
to...
of it and everything. Yeah, it's crazy. I should do a picture montage.
Yeah.
I have some
Yeah.
of the grossest pictures
Be on the lookout. Coming soon to our Instagram, I have a feeling.
pictures of ears.
Maybe a
But
warning ahead of time.
yeah,
Some of us don't want to see.
but for people who really struggle with wax buildup, first of all, just know that, the cerumen or wax, as we call it, in your ears is there to do a job. And it's not good to get out of the shower every night and get a Q-tip or a cotton swab and stick it in your ear. Because usually what you end up doing is you end up packing that wax or cerumen further into the ear canal. And you're going to inevitably at some point, hurt your eardrum, bruise the walls of the ear canal. The risk for injury is just higher. And, you're going to have some hearing issues too if you're packing the cerumen in tighter, because you're not usually pulling out what you think you're pulling out.
Right.
There are specialized tools for pulling it out, and they're kind of not serrated, but they look like drill bits. And those are a little bit more effective, I think, at pulling wax
They
out.
need to be done by a professional.
Yeah,
Yes.
they usually do. But you can buy ear lavage kits, and you can buy them on Amazon, and you can get them in the drugstore. And if you are a waxy person, this is something you can do, and you can put, like mineral oil or olive oil is better. I'm not a mineral oil fan, or hydrogen peroxide, and you just put it in your ear and you lay down for 15 minutes and let it just start dissolving that wax. And then you can flush it with warm water and hydrogen peroxide mixed together, and it will flush out the dissolved wax. And these nice little ear lavage kits have all the things you need to flush your ears, and that will help keep your ears clean. Now, it's also important to understand that you don't need to remove every iota of cerumen from your ear canal, because remember that cerumen is there to do a job. It's to help catch dust. It's to help catch things that could be irritants to your ears. Now, too much is a problem, but understanding, when it's too much, your healthcare provider can help you understand.
Yeah.
But it's just something, again, you can flush that, but don't pack it in. And
yeah,
don't do things that make it worse, like put
Yeah.
Bluetooth earpieces in your ear.
Yeah. And here's the thing, we're talking about sinuses and ears and colon, liver. When your sinuses are congested. When your ears are compacted. When the colon is compacted or congested. You aren't having bowel movements. The liver is the sneaky one.
Yeah.
It can be hard to know when your liver is congested. And it can be hard to know when it's a problem unless, sometimes at blood work that'll show the fatty liver, whether it's alcoholic or non-alcoholic fatty liver. And we see a lot of that. They say that that's actually non-alcoholic fatty liver is a silent epidemic because people walk around with it and don't realize it, that it's a problem because a lot of people don't do consistent blood work. And that's the first sign. But there are symptoms as well that you can learn to tune into and be aware of, because I find a lot of the time people think they have cognitive problems when really they have a liver problem. Now, not always, right? And there's additional screening and testing and ways you can determine that. But I find a lot of the time when people have brain fog or ADD, ADHD, it comes down to a poor functioning liver, a congested liver, a liver that's working too hard and can't keep up. So it's just something to be aware of. The signs, it can be fatigue, it can be food sensitivities. There's a lot of things it can be, but that's where practitioners, once again, a trained practitioner can help you determine where is that congestion happening. Because you don't always feel it like you do with the other areas.
And understand too, you can't flush your liver.
Right. Not like the same way, right? You can't. No, you can't. But there are things we can do that can help support the liver's ability to clear itself.
And I think that's a good segue into talking about cleanses. And I think this is really where we delineate between a flush and a cleanse, because not everybody understands the difference. And I think too that, sometimes people who speak about health don't even delineate the difference. But a flush is not a cleanse and a cleanse is not a flush. So we've talked about what a flush is. Now let's talk about what a cleanse is. A cleanse is just that. We're cleaning something. We're not forcing something out, but we are cleaning something so it performs better or looks better. What can we cleanse? We can cleanse anything. We cleanse our skin. We cleanse our hair. We cleanse our clothes. We can cleanse our liver. We can cleanse our digestive system, our lymphatic system, all kinds of things. Our eyes, our ears, anything you flush, you can cleanse, but you can't flush everything you cleanse. So, did I say that right? I think so.
Think so.
But what we use to cleanse may vary person to person. And cleansing, I think, can kind of get convoluted too, with some other ideas. So I think, let's talk about parasite cleanses,
Oh, yes.
because I don't think parasite cleanses are actually cleanses.
No. In fact, you got to do a lot of cleansing after you do a parasite
Yeah.
cleanse.
The cleanses, it's more like ethnic cleansing, which is a terrible way to think of it. When you say ethnic cleansing, it usually involves genocide, and that's what parasite cleansing is. It's the genocide of the worms.
Yeah, you want to blast those bugs out.
Yes. So a parasite cleanse isn't really cleansing an organ. It's really a kill program. We usually call it like the full moon, whatever. But a parasite cleanse isn't a cleanse. I guess you're trying to
cleaning. You're cleaning them out.
You're cleaning out. It's a kill.
Yeah.
Is what it is. But a cleanse as it pertains to killing something off, if you think about, like, if you have an infection and you're going to take an antibiotic, we don't call that a cleanse, right?
Right.
It's infection control.
It's a kill.
It's a kill, pure kill. When we're going after parasites, I don't know why we call it a cleanse. It's a misnomer. But
when you're doing parasite work, you know what? We're going to change the verbiage right here, right now. Y'all, it's happening right now.
Parasite program. One thing that we're very careful about is making sure all of the exits are open. And this is important for antibiotics too, or whatever you're doing, because if you start killing off organisms in the body and there's nowhere for it to go, or the liver can't process what's been done, you're going to feel like crap.
Yeah, or if your lymph isn't working, it probably isn't working in the first place, and then you start killing stuff off, it's really not going to kick into gear because now it's overloaded beyond what it already was.
Right. So I think that definitely pertains to parasite work, which we call cleanses, which really aren't cleanses. But if we think of liver cleanses or lymphatic cleanse or reproductive cleanses or colon cleanse or, oh goodness, you name it, it's always really important to first understand, what is my goal? What isn't working right? And what is my end goal? Is my goal, because a lot of people set goals like, well, I want to lose 10 pounds, or I want less acne, or I want my hair back, or I want my periods to straighten out, or I want to be able to see my feet again over my belly, or I don't know, whatever your goal is. Okay, well, for that to happen, then let's back up and let's say, well, where are you off? And what systems are involved? And how are we going to correct that? What needs to get cleaned up?
Like, what's contributing to it? You
Right.
have to talk about that.
Right. And if it's something that's junky, a lot of times we can see that in thermography, we can see it in blood work. But if you're just going by hook or by crook and you're just guessing, I mean, there are good guesses. Like, are you constipated? All right, well, we know your colon's jacked.
Do you sweat?
Um, yeah, I mean, you look at your elimination organs first, which are your lungs, your colon, your kidneys, and your skin. Those are your big ones, but your lymph is a big, big, big part of that, right? So you've got to look at those first. Are they working? If they're not, those are your first cleanses. And then after that, all right, how's digestion? Lymph, again, I always come, I
It
think
always comes back to lymph.
lymph plays so much into pain, into your skin texture and tone, into,
Well, bowels, like bowel movements.
mhm,
How many people have we worked with on their lymph and suddenly they're having unassisted bowel movements
for the
simply
first time.
because they finally helped the body take the trash out. They did dry skin brushing and lymphatic therapy that helped the lymph cleanse itself better.
Or their sensory overload is now manageable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that pertains to lymph. So I think with cleanses, it's understanding what's the goal and then how is this off? And that's where working with professionals is so important because for us, we're going to look at the person and, what are their genetics? What's wrong? What are the limitations of this person? What are their vulnerabilities? What are the existing diagnoses and problems? How are we going to go about this? Because it's not just a supplement protocol. We're not big on protocols. It's what diet is going to be best for this person? How long is this likely to take? So what's sustainable? And then do we need to use some herbs or is this going to be better dealt with homeopathically? Or do we want to look at nutritional, are we just going to do like some amino acids and some minerals and vitamins?
Or do we just work on hydration?
Yeah. Are we
Something
going to do
simple.
oxygen therapies,
Hmm.
lymphatic therapies? Do we need to bring in neural therapy?
Do we
It,
need to do emotional work? You know,
yes, the answer to emotional work is yes.
always yes. Because every organ holds different emotions according to traditional Chinese medicine. There are emotions that can be stored in that organ that are driving symptoms, and you can do all the physical things out there. You can make the dietary changes, you can take the supplements, you can do the therapies, the enemas, lymphatic therapy. But if you don't address the emotional aspect, you could just keep carrying this burden over and over again. And we do emotion code here because we see the significance of releasing those emotions from the body. Just helping the body acknowledge and let it go is powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So cleansing, what do you think is the most overlooked part of cleansing?
I think it's overcomplicated. And I think you kind of already hinted on that because what people are calling detoxes or cleanses, it is very confusing and convoluted. But even what we might call a detox, parasite, for example, cleanse slash detox, or when we, do a thermography and we see that the liver, the detox pathways aren't working and we see we need to support this. Well, we're going to do some detox support, but we're not pushing and forcing. We are just nourishing the body. We're giving the body better resources to open the exits, to do what it was designed to do. Because if you have to do something so harsh that you feel 10 times worse before you feel better, whether you want to call that a cleanse or a detox, that is not the right solution. It should never be 10 times worse before it's better.
I agree. I feel like we went through this period in the early 2000s where there was definitely this idea that you can prove something's going to work by whether you Herx or not.
Oh
And
my gosh, I
Herx
know.
is the idea of Herxheimer effect or a healing crisis.
Detox reaction.
And to me, I think there are a number of experienced providers now that understand No, it means you pushed too hard where you shouldn't have pushed,
The
or
body is crying for help and
it
support.
wasn't ready, right?
No.
Or the exit wasn't open. That
Yeah.
door was locked.
Yep.
So, our goal is always to not have that happen, or to minimize that in every way possible. Now, that being said, sometimes it's unavoidable.
Well, sometimes, especially when you're working on parasites,
Mhm,
sometimes you do have to push through a little bit. But at the same time, I know we both try so hard with our clients to understand where those vulnerabilities are going to be so we can provide tools, be it at home therapies or in office therapies like IVs. IVs are such a great way to
mhm.
complement detox, especially ozone. I feel like ozone IVs are a game changer when it comes to cleansing or detoxing. But with parasites, if you are trying to kill something and move it out, sometimes the body needs a helping hand. So we
Yeah,
don't have that Herxheimer effect.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm gonna jump over one last thing I wanna, like, touch on, because I feel like we need to mention it in the context of detoxification and flushing and cleansing. Because I love this. I think it's all good food for thought, and even though we're not giving out protocols per se, because there's tons of these things out there, but don't get caught up in the names of things. Don't get caught up with one person's
Exactly.
idea of what works for everybody, because if they're saying that, they're liars and you should run the other way. um what's right for you is right for you, and it's not necessarily going to work for anybody else in the same way, but whatever. Let's talk about fasting real quick, and I know we've talked about
Yes.
fasting before in another podcast
Hmm.
episode, but fasting is a form of detoxification. It is
Absolutely.
removing something or everything.
Hmm.
Right? It is a way of, removing things to allow the body rest to overcome. And so I think that that's important to implement fasting or consider fasting in the context of, okay, let's clean up.
Because once again, if your body's not eating, and our listeners can refer back to our podcast on fasting, but when your body isn't digesting food because you're eating around the clock, it has time to do deep cleaning. It has time to do the detox that God designed our bodies to do. It
Mhm.
can flush the toxins out. It can flush it, it can open the exits because it's not taking all that energy on food. So that's where you get the best detox ever is, I mean, just doing nothing sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I think fasting was the last episode.
Yes.
So give it a listen if you didn't already. With regard to detoxing, cleansing, flushing, it's not just the things that we put in our body, but it is the things we put on our body, and it is the things that we do. And so we don't want to
Yes.
neglect lymphatic therapy, grounding, castor oil packing, all of the practices that we can use, red light therapy. There are so many things that add to the beneficial effects of herbs and diet and fasting and enemas and whatever
Yes.
supplements that we're doing. It's a whole package thing, but taking some time to understand what your body appreciates most, and working with professionals who are going to help you get to the heart of, okay, this is your goal, these are your vulnerabilities, this is going to be the shortest way to get from point A to point B. Let's do it this way.
Mhm.
That's going to be the best way for you to pick out programs that work for you.
And then also on that same note is being aware of the things that you said put on our bodies. I'm going to take that a little bit further. Looking at scented products and the chemicals in our everyday world, candles, laundry detergents, lotions, cosmetics. There are so many things that tax our body every single day. And if there's one thing that you could do, you could be listening to this and thinking, I can't afford appointments with the practitioner right now. I can't afford to just buy these supplements or go do these therapies. Well, guess what? You can remove poison from your life. You
Mhm.
can remove those chemicals from what's going on your body, from what's going in your body. Quit using plastics. Don't use air fresheners. There's so many things and so many little changes that you can make in your daily life that will just amplify your chances of optimal health. So don't walk away and feel like you can't do anything. You can do something starting tomorrow just by removing chemicals from your life.
Yeah. I actually had a client come in this week, and I remember him walking in. I was like, I don't remember this person being scented before, but I could smell like laundry.
Dryer
So
sheets.
something. It wasn't dryer sheets. And he complained, yeah, we're having more headaches in the last month or so, and it's me and my wife. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And he said, I guess it's weather or something. And I'm telling you, I know I came to you because I was worried about my brain health, and I just feel like we need to get more on it about that. Maybe it needs to go up the priority list. And I pulled up the toxin tests, and I was like, huh. And I said, what kind of laundry soap are you using? Because I can smell you. And he went, you smell me? And I said, I don't remember smelling you before, and maybe I was just being nice, but you've got to let up. You got to change your laundry soap because phenols are a problem for you. BPA is a problem for you, and I can smell your soap. And he said, well, we were using unscented, and we just picked up a box of Tide.
Oh
And
my
I said, how
goodness.
long ago? And he's like, about a month ago. And it really rang with me because we recently had to do our laundry in a laundromat on a trip. And my husband was so sick. We used unscented soap, but the washing machine was
just drenched in scents.
And when he brought in my stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, this smells so bad. I can't wear these clothes. And he's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't even think, about the washing machines just smelling. And I was just undone. So I went and hung everything outside so it would dry, like get sunshine. But he put his on, 2-hour drive to the ranch. He felt terrible by the time he got home, and he couldn't figure out what was wrong. And he's not always like tuned into like, that's the first thing on his mind was it was the laundry soap. But he finally said all he could think to do was take his clothes off because the smell was bothering him so bad, because just the perfumey smell of it. So he took his clothes off and put something else on. And then he said immediately felt better.
Well, you know what? This is a great way to say what you and I say all the time. Clean should not have a smell. That is the best example. It shouldn't have a smell. If it does,
we've been lied to, people.
Yeah, if it has a smell, you're using chemicals, unless, it's an essential oil-based scent, and usually people make sure you know that on their product. The rest of the time, it's chemicals.
Yeah.
So cut it out.
It's not something you want. Yeah, absolutely. Well, good talk. And we hope that this episode resonates with you, our listeners. And we hope you can use this information to make better decisions towards your health and wellness. And we thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like or subscribe if you're on YouTube. Follow us on Rumble, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram for more wellness content. And if you'd like to book a consultation with one of us, visit k6wellness.com to learn more or schedule a free discovery call. We're located in Dallas, Texas, but we work with people all over the world. I'm licensed as a healthcare provider in Texas, Iowa, and Colorado. Until next time, take care, be well, and as always, your health is worth fighting for.